stage. Hello, 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 hello. I don't know where to look. We have so many different streams going. We have a stream going from here to Facebook to YouTube, and then we are streaming live with the back scenes of what's going on today on Instagram. So we want to hit everybody. We want to give everybody the opportunity to get this great information. Today we are in the loop with Lupus and Color, and we are talking about being merry and mindful. And we are not talking by ourselves. You're not just going to hear me talking today. We're going to be speaking with the lupus dietitian who's going to give us some great nutritional information. You all know her. She has been in our healthy kitchen before, and it's going to be awesome. But before we start that, let me just thank you all for tuning in. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to log on in, because this is not just information for lupus warriors. This is information that everybody can use, and I want to make sure that everybody has the information. So before we do that, let me just go through all the motions, because we have to make sure that you understand what's going on. I'm going to talk about our events disclaimer, and I'm just going to read this so that you know that we are trying to just provide information and education for you that may help you, but we also want you to make sure that you check with your doctor first. So the information or answers provided during Lupus and Color videos and live events are not meant to be used as a substitute for professional medical advice. Information provided may differ from your physician's advice. The information provided and presented is for educational purposes only, to support attendees in the quest to learn more about a most silent disease. Please check with your own physician before changing anything in your treatment plan. The information contained in any video or live event is not intended to recommend the self-management of health problems or wellness. It is not intended to endorse or recommend any particular type of medical treatment. Should any attendee have any healthcare related questions, promptly call or consult your physician or healthcare provider. No information presented should be used by any attendee to disregard medical and or health-related advice or provide a basis to delay consultation with your personal physician or qualified healthcare provider. Persons accessing this information assume a full responsibility for the use of the information and understand and agree that Lupus and Color or its presenters are not responsible or liable for any claim, loss, or damage arising from the use of this information. I like to put out that disclaimer because it's something that is very important. We don't want you to think that we are doctors here. Yes, we are professionals in our own careers, but the reality is you need to check with your doctor before changing anything. And because we're talking about mindfulness and because we're talking about nutrition, I love to put out that disclaimer. So thank you everybody for tuning in from Facebook, YouTube, and from Instagram. Today, we are going to be talking about being merry and mindful, and we're going to be speaking with the lupus dietitian known as Tanya. You all have seen her on our Healthy Kitchen before. I'm going to read her little bio first, and then I'm going to bring her up so we can start our program and you can hear what we all have to say. Tanya is a registered dietitian nutritionist. So, guys, we are not just talking off the cuff. This is her career, okay? She knows what she's talking about. She has worked as a dietitian for more than a decade and has had the pleasure of counseling thousands of people. She has collaborated with people to reach their goals and feel their best no matter their medical condition. Her own struggles with autoimmune disease started more than 20 years ago. After being diagnosed with lupus and suffering through many flares, she completely changed her diet and lifestyle. You hear what she said? Completely changed her diet and lifestyle. And she was already following a healthy diet as a dietitian and completely eliminated her flares. She continues to work with people with lupus to heal themselves, eliminate flares, and feel great. So with that, I want to bring her up so that she can say hello and give you a little bit about herself. Hey there, Tanya, how are you?
Oh, so good. So nice to see y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my
Thank you for the very nice introduction too.
Oh, it's so good to see you. It's so good. It's been a while since we've been in the healthy kitchen, huh?
Too long, too long. I've just been stuck in my kitchen. I want to come in your kitchen.
Come on over. Come on over to my kitchen. How have you been? Let's start with that.
Really good. Thank you so much for asking. But as we get into this merry and mindful holiday season, things get busy. So things are already coming up. I'm already thinking of things for my daughter for the holidays, family visiting, and different events that I'm like, oh man, I've got to get that ready for Saturday. And so it's already started. The craziness has started.
I know it's starting to get really busy. And
Yeah.
for me, though, you know what? I don't even have to prepare anything this year because my son has moved out into his own apartment. So I get to go and just bring one dish.
That's amazing.
I'm so excited about that. This is the first year I'm not cooking. So it's exciting, but it's very stressful, right?
Yes, still totally. I think although the best thing for holidays is always that potluck where it's like, all right, I'm in charge of one thing. That's it. So putting all the pressure on one person is too much.
It is. It is. I don't even know how I used to do it, but we did. We survived. You know. So let's talk about being mindful during this holiday season. You know, we're talking about merry and mindful, and we want to be mindful not only of our nutrition, but we also want to be mindful of our habits and our mental stability as we deal with lupus. So I want to just show you this little slideshow, and then we can talk about whatever we see here, and then we can discuss it even further as you go into your presentation. We know a healthy mind breeds a healthy body and vice versa. Do you agree with that?
100%, 100%. It's all interconnected.
And, right. That mind body connection is really real. It is very strong, and it really helps us to connect that mind and body to get to a mindful place. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's the holiday season. We know it can be joyful, like you said, but it can also be very stressful, you know, and everybody's experience is probably going to be a bit different. But the reality is it can be a stressful period. So we want to talk about some habits. What kind of habits do you have during the holiday season that helps you get through it mentally? Not even physically at this point, but mentally.
I am such a fan of to-do lists. So give me all the to-do lists. Now, granted, I have a lot of to-do lists. I have the grocery to-do list, the work and client to-do list, and then my personal to-do list. But that's really my biggest thing is I cannot have all of this stuff swirling around in my brain because otherwise it will just keep popping up. Oh, don't forget that thing on Wednesday. So I put everything on a to-do list. I put everything on my calendar because otherwise too much of my mental energy is just spent on don't forget that. So that's my biggest thing that I feel like really, really helps me is just getting it out of my brain onto paper. And then also, honestly, is communicating with other people. So making sure that we're all on the same page, that we all understand what's happening. Certainly people in my family, but whoever's involved in the thing, like let's just chat on the phone. Let's make sure we both understand what this is.
Let's know what's going on before it's going on. Right. Exactly. It's funny because everything that you're saying is actually on in the slide. That's why I was asking you. You know, it's really weird. It's so funny how in tune we are sometimes. It makes me laugh. Set realistic expectations. Like you said, make those to-do lists. Make those goals that you can do, but also realize that, hey, some of those things are just not going to get done. Yes. You know, and like we were talking before, like, you know, we used to do all of the cooking. Now we understand, okay, well, maybe I can't do all of it. Let me set the goal just to do one or two things that help to keep that mental clarity as you're going through that whole holiday season. It's so funny you said that. Communicate to your loved ones. Did you look at this before you? Because you know what? Sometimes don't you feel like you don't want to tell your family what's going on? Like if you're not feeling well or whatever have you, you don't really communicate that often, especially during the holiday season, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm it's hard because it's also like taking the energy to
Mm,
communicate that is sometimes not where I want to put my energy, but you should.
right, right.
You should put your energy there and clue people in so they can support you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they can support you and then be open to receive that support, right?
100%, which is also sometimes really hard for people, especially our independent ladies out there that are
Mm,
like, I can do everything and I'm going to do it the best. And you may be right. You may be right that you are going to do the best, but you can't do everything the best all the time.
yeah, yeah. And you have to relinquish some of that to other people. You
Yes.
know, delegate, 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 even with the cooking.
Yes. And you know what? Even if it doesn't taste as perfectly as yours did and as good as yours did, it's food. It'll be fine. It's
Right?
good.
Absolutely. As long as it's edible,
Yeah.
just go with the flow, right? Go with the flow. And you know what? Just practicing mindfulness in that whole area of going with the flow. Because sometimes I think that we worry so much and we stress ourselves out mentally that it's hard to just stop and be, and just paying attention to how did you cook the food? How did it feel when you were preparing the food? Were you preparing it with love? Were you angry? Because I think that sometimes that can come through your food preparation.
Yeah, definitely. And also just I think for the whole, well, we'll talk more about this, but I know you posted that you were cooking and it looks delicious, that salmon, and
Oh,
you were preparing it mindfully, but there's so much joy to be had in just being in the moment of whatever it is. And you're right, the food, it does taste a lot better when it's prepared with love.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny you said that I was doing it with mindfulness because you know what? I cannot stand the kitchen. Let me just be honest. I hate to cook. I do it because I have to eat. But you know what? I've learned to be mindful in that cooking so that I like it more, you know, and it's helping me to enjoy just the act of cooking now, and wanting to do more of that.
Yes, definitely. And then also, then you find your groove where maybe you're listening to music that just feels really good. And it can be very almost like the ASMR, like you,
Right.
really methodical and kind of rhythmic if you're like chopping things or just stirring something. Like if you really, really take it down to being peaceful about it, it can also be a meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's strong. Yeah, that's true. I was making some what was it? I guess it was muffins or something, like some banana nut muffins. And I'm sitting there, spinning the bananas and everything. And I'm like, hey, this is a workout. So I actually kind of like went into it with the mindfulness of working out and said, oh, let's change hands and do that on the other side.
Yes. Oh my gosh. 100%. You know, I read this study. This is off track, but we'll get it back track real quick. I read this study a while ago, and it was about these housekeepers. And they divided the housekeepers into two groups. And they told one group, all right, your job doesn't count as exercise. You need to do exercise outside of your job
Mhm,
and make a plan for the exercise. Are you going to go and walk? Are you going to do strength training? Whatever it may be,
mhm.
make your plan. And then they told the other group, they're all doing exactly the same job. They told the other group, your job counts as exercise. Treat it as such. Be serious about it. Be mindful in the moment. Like, let's say if you're putting the sheets under the mattress, squat down, put the sheets under the mattress because you're doing exercise. And then I forget the time frame, if it was a month or 2 months, they came back. They went and talked to all of those housekeepers. They did all of the like body measurements, weight, etc., to check their body composition, what had changed. And the people that were just told your job is exercise were fitter. They had lost weight. They
Wow.
had more muscle mass than the people that said your job isn't exercise. So just to the beginning of how much our mind and body is connected, there's so much to be said about just treating things and being in the moment and doing it with your full heart and head and body.
Yeah, absolutely. With your full attention, with your full mindfulness, and just realizing that has a purpose that
Yeah.
you don't even realize sometimes, you know? Very good story. I love that. I love
Thank
that. We're off track at all. I love that. I love that. Take care of yourself. We can't stress this one enough, guys. It's so important to do things that give you joy, and during these holidays, sometimes we might not have that joy. We might be mourning someone. We might be mourning our old self that we can't do as much as we used to. So, doing those things for self care, which can include anything from reading a book to taking a bath to just sitting and being, listening to your favorite podcast or something like that. It can be anything. So what do you do usually for a little bit of self-care if you're overwhelmed during the holiday season? For me, I literally will go in my room and shut the door for like 10 minutes. I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. Nope, I'm in my room. Just relaxing, because sometimes I do get overwhelmed with the amount of people and just talking and the emotions that go with hosting and things of that nature. What
Yes.
type of things do you do?
Okay, so great question. I think you're giving a good example of like in the midst of a lot of people and a lot of hustle and bustle. So I agree with you. I would probably also be like, "Gotta go to the bathroom," and then like peace out for a little bit. Um, but just over the course of the whole holiday season, I think your tools are exactly what people should do. So set realistic expectations and also think about the whole holiday season as like, do I want to sign up for all of these things? Like, is that really going to give me joy, give me life? Is that an event that is so important for me? So I'll try to manage the whole thing and say no to things, which is so hard to do. But sometimes you got to say no or it's going to be crazy. So that's like big picture to make sure that I'm not getting burnt out over the holidays. But definitely, like on a day to day basis, I really, really make it a priority to do those little things that make me more sane,
Right.
like moving my body in a way that feels good. And literally, sometimes I will be wearing clothes that are not appropriate for exercising, but I'll just put on like a 5 minute, 10-minute yoga video before I jump in the shower and get in my PJs in whatever clothes I'm wearing because they're already going to go into the dirty, and just stretch and just listen to the music and like have that moment with my body. I try to get good sleep. That I think is really, really important, and it's going to help you feel so much better. So sleep is also something I really prioritize. And of course, eating healthy. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
it,
always it's always fun to eat healthy when for a holiday.
well, you know what I tell people for the holidays? We'll go into this more, but treat all the rest of your meals as regular meals. Go ahead and fill up on the healthiest things that make you feel your best. And then on a special meal, enjoy the special meal. Don't try to modify it. Enjoy all your favorites that maybe aren't the healthiest, but have it on Thanksgiving. You don't need it Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You don't need a whole week of Thanksgiving. Just have it on Thanksgiving. Maybe the leftovers that you have are like the healthy stuff. You keep those. Send everybody home with leftovers that you know are not going to make you feel good.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. I agree. You don't need it all week. It's funny you said that because I asked my husband, I said, well, do you want me to, fix a meal here? He was like, why? It's only us. We do not need all that food for the rest of the week. And it's funny that you said say no, because
There you go.
to learn those boundaries, because people will pull from us all through the holiday season because it's a holiday. They want to be around you, they want you to be at everything, but everything we don't have to be at. And we can say no. And that's a complete sentence.
Yes.
Sentence.
Which is so hard. I feel like so many of us with autoimmune diseases, before we were diagnosed, were able to do all of it, give 110%. And we're probably pushing each other or pushing ourselves way too hard.
Right.
And so then you've got a diagnosis and you got to figure out how to live with it. But also you have to figure out a little bit of your identity of like, no, I cannot be superwoman 24/7, 365 days a year.
Right.
And
Take that cape off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's hard. It is hard. Like you said, it's very hard. But it's important. It's
Yeah.
important for us to realize for ourselves that we're not superhuman. Sometimes we are, because sometimes we get up past the pain or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But we aren't superhuman, and sometimes we just have to stop. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Michelle said that she had that moment last night where she just had to go somewhere and just take a break. you know,
Take that break. Say
yeah,
no.
yeah, and don't and you know what? Don't feel guilty about it, Michelle, because it is what it is. If they don't understand, then so be it. They don't have to
Totally.
understand. Only you need to understand. Then our last slide is just, if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to talk to someone. Don't be afraid to reach out to your therapist if you have one. Just so that you know that mentally during the holidays, you are still merry, but you're still mindful of your own self. And you're still mindful of what's going on in your body, including the physical and the mental aspects of it. So now we dealt with all that mental area of it. Those are your little 5 steps, your little 5 habits that you can take with you. And once again, we want to just say hi to everyone. Thank you for tuning in over in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I don't know where we're everywhere tonight. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Destiny. She is coming in from Goshen, Indiana. Oh, nice. Must be cold. I know it's cold there. I know it's cold. So we've dealt with all of that. And now we need to deal with the nutrition part of it
Yes.
and figure out how to be merry, merry, merry,
Uh-huh.
but also be mindful of what we're putting in our bodies.
Yes, 100%. So using those mindfulness tips, let's start biggest picture of like no matter where you are, if you have no control over your food, this is just a mystery plate in front of you. What we can do, like Raquel has been posting this whole week, which has been so amazing, is being mindful in the moment of eating. So today's tip, at least that I saw, I don't know if it was yesterday's tip, was using your other hand to eat, which I tried. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's like, where's my mouth? I don't know. But be mindful with what you are eating. So talking about like, let's say, thinking about the holiday season, you don't need to go crazy the whole holiday season. Just like Halloween. Okay, it's Halloween. It's one day. You don't need to eat candy for 3 weeks ahead of time. So don't knock yourself off course, whatever course you are leading, by saying, oh, it's the holidays, because you're just not going to feel very good if you continue to choose some foods or habits that aren't the healthiest. So being mindful of what's in front of you. So maybe use the other hand, but slow it down. So put the fork down between bites, or if you're using your other hand, whatever hand you're using, put it down between bites and actually taste the food. There's a lot of mindfulness exercises of like eating one little raisin and like smelling and looking at. We don't all have the time for that all the time, but that's okay. But whatever you have in your mouth, really smell it before it comes. Take that one bite, really feel the texture, slow it down, chew it a lot more thoroughly, especially fast eaters. Sometimes you're used to just like, whoop, pop it in, and then like 4 bites and it's going down. And that's not great for our digestion. It's certainly not mindful eating. And you're going to eat and not even taste what you're eating. So slowing it down, chew more thoroughly. You certainly don't have to chew 50 times per bite, but really make sure that all those little pieces are really, really small, that it's actually chewed thoroughly. And this is good for your digestion and absorbing nutrients. So there's a benefit to it too. Yeah. So chew, chew, chew. Put the fork down between bites.
Right.
Take your time. Also, other ways to kind of slow down is having your water, maybe take a sip. Also, try not to eat while you're distracted. So, no TV, no cell phone, no computer. Unfortunately, when we're distracted with any of those screens, we're not even tasting the food. People do this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. With potato chips, if you're eating this while you're in front of the TV, suddenly you put your hand in and it's like, oh, the bag's empty. What happened to that? I didn't even taste it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And that happens a lot because, it's just because you're not paying attention. You're just going with the flow. And some of us emotionally eat.
Yes.
We could be eating because we're bored or because, we had a hard day. So yeah, just stopping and just realizing, okay, I used to tell my son, take the potato chips if you can have some potato chips, but take
Yes.
the potato chips and put it on a plate. Put a little
Yes.
bit on the plate, roll up the bag and put it away.
Yeah.
This way you don't overeat that, being mindful of how much you're eating.
And just intentional. So in
Mm,
that moment, you're deciding, you're checking in with your body. You're saying, how hungry am I? I'm a little bit hungry. Okay, I'm going to put a little handful of chips on here. You're
right.
putting it on a plate. You're treating it like, okay, this is my snack. Also, there is something to be said about just having it on plates in general, because then you almost treat it like, well, that's not really a complete snack. Like if I saw potato chips, I'd be like, well, maybe I should have like a little piece of fruit on the side. Like
Right.
that, if I'm gonna have a snack, I'm gonna have a snack.
Right.
So just being that intentional, putting it on a plate also really helps you have that pause. So like let's say you finish all your chips and you're like, am I still hungry? And you can have that check in with your body before you go out and get another handful of chips for your plate. So those are, it's almost like you're creating a structure to support your habits. So the more and more you do that, the easier and easier it will be, because also that communication with your body is going to be like, instead of a little whisper of a voice of like, shh, you should probably not eat so many potato chips. It'll be like, no, I'm satisfied. I'm done, because you gave yourself an opportunity to take a break.
Right.
Oh, and put it in a small sandwich bag. So that works too.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You just put it in a little small sandwich bag and make a note to yourself that that's all I'm going to eat. I think sometimes we want to remove it all at one shot. Do,
Mm.
do you advise that we do that?
Oh yeah, no, not really. I mean, think about us as humans. We have habits that we got from our parents years and years ago, and then maybe from our friends, and we didn't change overnight. So I usually do not expect anyone that I'm working with as a client to be able to implement a million changes at once. That's why I work with people over months,
Mm,
because you can give yourself that grace of like, you know what, I'm trying this new thing, but I'm really having a hard time with it, and not be perfect, because no one can be perfect. That's really the diet mentality of like, oh, I'm
mm.
going to do all the things and only eat these foods. And anybody can force themselves to do it for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then you're exhausted. And
Yeah.
then you haven't gotten any skills that you can actually keep long term.
Yeah. And then you get to a point where I think Michelle said that she had a morning of who she used to be. It's almost like a morning of what you used to be able to eat,
Yeah.
and that can be a serious moment and a turnaround in how you're eating and feeding your body, because we want to feed our body good things, but we don't want to always have to eat a bean for lunch. If that makes sense.
Very satisfying, yeah. You know, where if we're really getting like deep inside of like, what is our relationship with food? You're right. A lot of people struggle with emotional eating, but at the end of the day, when you are having a little bit of a struggle, maybe with your lupus diagnosis, maybe with just loving yourself in general, sometimes it can be hard to nourish yourself well. But if you can get to that point where you're like, you know what, I love myself, I want to show myself love with food that makes me feel good, then it's like a whole new chapter for a lot of people.
I love that statement. Show myself love with the food that makes me feel good. You know,
Yeah,
and that's not even just feeling good emotionally, it's feeling good physically.
physically,
What
exactly.
foods make you feel good physically,
Hmm.
as opposed to always eating with what makes you feel good emotionally.
Right,
That
right.
whole relationship is important.
Yeah. And also sometimes those emotional, like that moment of feeling good is only at the very beginning. Like, oh, this tastes really good. Like that second, but only the first bite or two. It
Yeah.
often doesn't last that whole portion.
Yeah, and then you start to feel guilty because you feel like you did something wrong,
Right. Right.
and eating food emotionally. So it's such a process.
It is. It is. And then you also, so you can't always just take away a habit. So you have to figure out what to replace that habit with. So if you were dealing with your emotions with food, we can't just take it away. We have to think about, when I feel these emotions, what
What
am I supposed to do with them? Yeah.
Destiny says, here lately I have been craving salad. Oh, that's a good thing. I work at McDonald's, so sadly I eat McDonald's every day. Not a good thing. I told my husband I would like to start taking fruit and salad to work. I don't drink enough water either. Let's talk about that. I'm glad that her body is craving that salad, though. Your body's telling you something. How does that work?
Yeah. So it's funny because I have so many people that at the beginning of us working together are kind of like, um, a little bit like, whoa, okay, I'm making these changes.
Right.
And and for the first time having that conversation with their body of like, am
Mm.
I full? Am I satisfied? Do I want this? Do I want that? Because they're actually thinking about it, like really focused on it for the first time in a long time. Sometimes we just eat what's around and we don't even think about it. So that's wonderful that your body's telling you, hey, I want something fresh and crispy and juicy because it's lettuce, not because it's meat. So your body's sending you a message, and it's great that you're honoring it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? When you go, I know when I was working, for me, I had to make a conscious effort to do it the night before.
Yes.
Leave myself sticky notes to take. You know what I would do? I would make the meal, make the healthy meal, and then walk out the door. And now I still have to buy something outside,
Oh, the
So I have
worst.
to find ways to like make the meal the night before, put a sticky note wherever I'm gonna look first thing in the morning so that I would actually be able to take all of that with me.
This is like a little bit aggressive, and you have to remember that you put them in there, but you can put your keys in the fridge.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
That's
You,
smart.
you can't
Yeah.
leave without it, but you got to remember.
That is smart. I didn't even think about that. that's a that's a good idea. Because you're gonna be looking for your keys.
You're
But
gonna
then,
be looking for your keys, yeah. And you could always put a post-it note where, I guess, where you leave your keys normally, like the keys in the fridge. Don't forget your lunch. But yeah, whatever reminders. I think the biggest nugget that you said there is that you had to plan, and that is the number one thing that helps people so much. Is
yeah.
if you plan ahead, because no one makes good decisions when they're hungry. No one makes good decisions when they're tired. But if you are able to take a high energy moment, a moment that you're feeling good, and plan for those moments that you're not feeling so good, you're going to get so much further.
Yeah, and that just goes back to like not necessarily meal planning or anything like that, but just being mindful. Being
Yes.
mindful of how you're expecting your body to be fueled for the next day. I guess that's how I can say it. You
Yeah.
know? So it's hard because it's a habit that you have to break. Our affirmation for today in the 7-day eating mindful eating challenge is just understanding that old habits can be broken,
Mm.
being conscious of making sure that you see it as an old habit and create a new one, like you were saying. How are you replacing it?
And that those old habits didn't define you. Sometimes I have people come to me as a client and they're like, I'm not an exerciser. And I'm like, but everybody moves their body. Maybe you're not an athlete. Maybe you weren't a sports player, but you can be a walker, a dancer, a yoga person, a Pilates person. There's a million ways, a swimmer. You can play pickleball. There's a million ways to move your body in a way that feels good.
Right.
And just old habits are not defining you.
Exactly. That's so important. Carolyn says, "Thank you both for this needed discussion." I feel the same way. You're welcome because
Yeah.
I really feel like sometimes we put so much focus on a diet when we just have to learn how to relate to food, like you stated. You know, and it makes a difference. So tell me this, and I have some questions, of course, because I always
Yeah.
have. question. I always have questions. How can individuals maintain a healthy diet during the holiday season? I know you touched on it a little bit, whereas you were saying to eat what you want for one meal or whatever have you. Of course, we don't overindulge. We have to have a great balance, but we don't want to just take it all away. So, how would you suggest that people would do that?
So many suggestions. Okay. First of all, so we've got it where you're having the one meal, you're excited about the Thanksgiving, great. But also making sure that you're not doing this like kind of pendulum swinging back and forth. Sometimes people say, I'm going to save up for that meal. They don't eat all day. Then you overeat that meal. You feel so sick, so ill, so overstuffed. You didn't feel good when you were hungry either. So just treat your body with care. And so, yes, we have those one meals that maybe are a splurge or some other things that we don't normally eat, but also have your snacks, pack your snacks, eat your regular meals. And one way that's also really kind of like a fun twist on things is just trying to eat seasonally. So it's cheaper, it's more nutritious. So right now, for example, sweet potatoes or squashes, cranberry, different seasonings that we use with those foods like sage and cinnamon. Take advantage of those to make your everyday meals. Certainly vegetables. I'm always going to tell y'all to eat vegetables, but making them a little bit more exciting and appealing. Like, again, showing yourself love with these things. So I think it's not only nourishing yourself consistently, but also have a little fun with it. And that can make it seem not like, oh, I'm just eating my regular boring food, because now it's seasonal food and you're treating yourself just with something that's maybe not as indulgent or as off track.
Right. And it's just not a chore anymore. It's something that you said is you're making it fun and inviting for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like when you're eating, you don't want to have a cluttered table. You want to have, a clean table. So it's inviting. Put some flowers on the table, things
Yeah.
that make it more interesting for you. That's a very good point. So now, are there any specific dietary considerations for individuals with lupus during the holidays that you would suggest? I know you said the seasonal foods. What other type of things that you would suggest?
Yeah. So definitely tuning in on your body. So some people have food intolerances. They eat, I'll just throw one out there. Dairy is one of those that a lot of people kind of ignore is a problem, because no one wants to admit they're lactose intolerant. No one wants to admit that, oh, that made me really gassy. So that's one example where it is kind of tricky over the holidays. But if you know that your body does not react well to dairy, try to avoid it. See how much better you can feel if you're really being conscious of it and avoiding it. So whatever food intolerances you may have, avoid so that you can enjoy things, because our food does affect how we feel. It's going to affect how much energy you have for things, your attention span. If you're running to the bathroom because you've got abdominal cramps and you have diarrhea, you're not having the best time.
Right. You spend half your time on a holiday in the toilet. That kind of sucks, man.
Yeah, it does. It does. And then also fuel up on the things that are very anti-inflammatory. So, of course, vegetables, seasonal is best and cheaper. So that helps it stay in the grocery budget.
Right.
Apples are in season. Pomegranates are easier to find now and are on sale. These are all super anti-inflammatory because they're fresh. They've got a lot of antioxidants and phytochemicals, and then those healthy fats. So you were asking me kind of like what could be a problem during the holiday season. Certainly dairy for some people, but for everybody, we shouldn't really have a whole lot of sodium or saturated fats. Yeah. So saturated fats might be like beef, butter. If you're avoiding dairy, you're going to cut that out anyway. And sodium could be coming from like processed foods, or let's say you've got someone in the family that's just a heavy salt person, and you're like, oh, whenever they prepare the food, it's going to be salty.
Right.
Maybe have a much smaller portion of that. especially if you have lupus that affects your kidneys. We really got to be careful with sodium.
And that's important that you said that because I think we try to make people happy.
Mm.
We still eat it, and and sometimes that's an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm having some issues with my lupus at this time, so I can't eat as much, today, instead of just going for it because you're at Aunt Susie's house and she made it.
Oh, there's always those food pushers.
Yeah.
Eat more, eat more. Yes, I agree with you. That's exactly what you should say. Hey, I'm having a struggle with my lupus lately. I just got to keep it simple. Or my stomach hurts lately. I really can't tolerate this. I love your food. Let me take home a to-go container. I'll enjoy it later, and then just give it to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Sunshine said, "Hey there, Sean." She said, "I just realized today that my PCP says to eat one particular diet, and my nephrologist says eat another particular diet that contradicts each other."
Uh-oh. They should communicate with each other.
Yeah,
But
right?
yeah, that's a problem I'm sure many of us out there that are dealing with lupus have dealt with before, where unfortunately our doctors are, the PCP shouldn't usually, but like, let's say your nephrologist, your GI doctor,
Mhm.
your hematologists, they're all focused on their area of specialty, and they really want you to improve the thing that they're paying attention to.
Right.
But sometimes they're not paying attention to all these other things. So while your primary care should be kind of considering the whole you, maybe they just have different information about what would be best too. I'm sorry that they're contradicting each other. That's so tough.
Yeah, and maybe you might want to talk to them both, send them both a little message in whatever, system that you have to say,
Yeah.
and you guys aren't communicating. I'm a little confused. Sometimes you just got to go at them like, I'm confused, even though
Yeah.
we know they're confused. But I'm a little confused. What is the right thing to do here? And you know what I tell people to do also, Tanya? Keep a food journal so you know how food interacts with your body. How do you think that works for people?
I couldn't nod any harder. My head's gonna fall off. 100%. 100%. Please keep a food journal, because sometimes something affects you right away. Sometimes it doesn't affect you for a little while, and it can be so confusing to differentiate things. Yes, keep a food journal, keep a symptom journal. Also, like, let's say if your doctors are changing your medications, if life is throwing changes at you, you want to be able to see when your symptoms come up and down and what you did. So, for example, let's say you're always like, I don't know what's bringing on my flares. And then you do your food and symptom journal and you're like, oh, wow. Like, you know what? That week was really stressful. I forgot my lunch at home and I was eating out 3 of the days. And then 2 days later, I had a terrible stomach ache. Probably it's one of those things, but you may not connect it otherwise because it wasn't immediately after.
Absolutely. And then you have the opportunity when you're keeping that journal to bring it to your doctor and say, look, I had some beef and now I've been in a flare for 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So that's very good information. Very good information. Like healthy fruits aren't good if you have protein in your urine. Hmm.
So that is a good question. So I can see if this is coming from your nephrologist. Maybe they're trying to get your potassium down.
Right.
Fruits can be very high in potassium. So maybe they're telling you to avoid things like banana, avocado, spinach, tomato. Those are very high potassium things, but also very healthy. So maybe that's what's going on. But they should explain it to you. And I think the I'm confused response is the best, so that you can get further clarification. Like, what do you actually mean?
Right.
And then they can explain, oh, maybe it's about the potassium. Maybe what they're trying to say is don't put it all in a smoothie because the prednisone is making your sugar go up a little bit. So there's a lot of different things. And I'm so sorry for everyone out there that has had this experience with a doctor where you're like, you give me a recommendation, but why? Like, what is this supposed to help or solve?
Yeah, and you know what? Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. from your doctors. They're working for you, and you have to advocate for yourself well enough so that when you leave out that doctor's office, you can explain it to a child and they understand it. You know, it's so
100%.
important.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if there's any questions over here. And
Oh, you know what? Let me run through my Instagram. Oh, one person said, yes, for me, it's dairy, but it's a little hard for me to stay away, LOL. So totally, I get it, especially if your whole family's using dairy. What I would recommend is at home, just having those dairy alternatives. Honestly, they are so much better than they were in past years. Like, I'll tell you honestly, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the dairy free cheese was cardboard. It was terrible, terrible. And
yeah,
like people that were vegetarian or vegan were really having trouble finding alternatives. But nowadays, like the dairy free, the plant based butters, plant based cheeses are much better. Just having those things on hand can make a really, really big difference.
yeah, and taking the time to do the research about it,
Mm.
asking your doctor, asking your insurance, how can you use your insurance to see a dietitian, so that you can have that good information and that proper information that will help you along your journey.
Yeah.
Because we know that our diet cannot cure it, but we surely definitely understand and know that our diet will either make it worse or make it better. It could be our poison or it could be our power, whichever one we choose it to be.
Yeah, definitely. And the food that we eat becomes our body. Like, think about all your skin cells and how you heal. That's not coming from the air. You're giving yourself food. It's broken down into tiny little pieces, then it becomes building blocks. So you don't have to be perfect. Don't take it as like, oh my gosh, I I have to overhaul my whole diet. But just when you are considering foods, when you are thinking about your diet, thinking about, is this a helpful food, or is this the sort of meal that I always feel sick afterwards,
Right,
can
right,
really help you also think about big picture. Actually, one of my clients today, she was like, it's not that big of a deal to implement these changes, because I feel like, well, do I want this? Or long term, do I want my kidneys to fail? Do I want to go on dialysis? Because no, I do not. So I will choose the healthy diet and do the best I can, things in my power to feel really good.
right, exactly. Because even when you were diagnosed with lupus, you had to make the decision to take this medicine or don't take the medicine. Whether the medicine was going to give you some side effects, you had the actual things that the medicine were going to do for you outweigh those side effects. Same thing with your food. It could be your medicine or it could be a poison.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
know? Kelsey says, I switched to almond milk and it's so much better.
There you go.
You
You
know?
know, it's not, you don't have to throw away the whole fridge. You can make those small changes. When you run out of milk, hey, I'm going to try this almond milk. One of my friends said it tasted really good. Then you can do it piece by piece. And then you know what else I wanted people to take away up for like eating healthy over the holidays is think about your favorites. This is another thing I just talked about today with a client. She was talking about Thanksgiving and like, I'm really a little bit nervous about it. And I was like, well, what are your favorite dishes? And so she listed a couple. And I was like, okay, well, that one's the hardest for it to fit all the criteria. Why don't you make your own version at home? And
There you
then
go.
that way, you've had it as part of your holiday experience, but you also know, okay, I can eat several portions of this and feel great.
Right. Right. I mean, planning. It all goes back to planning
Yeah.
and being mindful of what you put in your body, what you put in your body, what you put in your mind, and how you look at food. Like when when I say I don't even like to cook, I really don't. But because I've been mindful, I'm enjoying it now because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, how can I prepare this differently than I used to prepare it? Just like you said, you just start one little step at a time. My mother used to always say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
I like that phrase. That was
So now,
you know,
go ahead. You can go ahead.
just one last takeaway that I wanted to talk about before we change topics for the holidays is also just being careful with your alcohol because it is pretty inflammatory. Try to take breaks. So if you, I don't know, have apple cider and it's a drink and you're just so excited about it, okay, have your one, but then have something like seltzer with lime in case anyone's an alcohol pusher and it looks like a drink, but you're just getting hydrated and really just kind of take it down a notch because that alcohol is pretty inflammatory, especially if you're having multiple.
And that's funny because that was my next question because it's the holiday
Oh,
season. Everybody's gonna always ask you to have a drink or whatever have you. So definitely you got to watch the alcohol. Definitely got to
yes.
watch it because
And you
it
know
will.
what?
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh, the mocktails are really yummy. And a lot of places are offering a lot more mocktails. If you're going over to someone's house, just bringing a mocktail that you're excited about, or just asking, hey, can I just mix up some of this juice with some seltzer and just have my own thing?
Right. And
What were
it,
you going to
and then it goes back to being your own best advocate, and not being afraid to tell people. I think that sometimes dealing with lupus, you're afraid to tell people that you have lupus and that you can't do this, you can't go out in the sun as long, or there are certain things that you just can't eat. And I think that sometimes we just have to say it. Look, I I don't want to eat that because it's going to cause me a flare or whatever have you. And don't be afraid to just let that out because number one, it's going to bring you some just oh like a sigh of relief because now you don't have to worry about Johnny May always asking you if you want to drink. No, I don't drink anymore.
Yep.
No, I will take a little bit of seltzer, but I'm not drinking anymore. And speaking of seltzer, like a lot of people have a problem drinking water.
Yes. Especially in the colder months.
Yeah, so I never understood that, and that may be because I was an athlete. It was pushed on us that we had to drink water. I've always liked water,
Yeah.
but how do you suggest that they get that water intake without, having to have the seltzer, maybe infusing it with some fruit or what?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. So a lot of things. If the problem is that you don't like cold water and it's just coming out of the fridge cold or coming out of the filter cold and you're already kind of cold because it's winter time, just fill up a pitcher, keep it on the counter. You can have room temperature water. Have a big water bottle. Some of them even have like the times throughout the day to
Yeah,
make sure that you're going. There's apps that say, hey, have you had some water yet this hour? They'll remind you. And you could take advantage of like herbal teas, like decaf teas, turmeric, cinnamon, ginger, make a whole big pot. You can drink it hot throughout the day and keep reheating it. Or if you just want to, again, fill a pitcher, put it on the countertop. Now
right.
you've got something that has a nice flavor. It's just room temperature, so it's not going to make you cold. It doesn't feel like, oh, it's boring water. And now you're getting something that actually even has more benefit.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it tastes good.
It's,
You know,
yeah,
it
it
has a
tastes good.
little it has a little flavor to it, so it tastes good. I'm trying to find the questions that were put on Instagram
Okay.
so that we can start wrapping it up because I want to be respectful of your time. Let me
Sure.
see.
I am going through my notes too of just other things that I wanted to bring up with people. And
Sure.
we talked about emotional eating and kind of replacing those, but also our whole holiday season is not just food. It's family, it's traditions, it's
Absolutely.
maybe going to see the Christmas lights in a different neighborhood. Like there's so many other parts of the holiday season that can be beautiful traditions that aren't revolving around food. So don't feel as though, oh, I've made these dietary changes or oh, I'm not drinking as much and now there's going to be nothing for me because that's not true at all. It may just be again thinking about those other things that are really important and really special and making them even bigger.
Right, right. And creating maybe a new tradition for yourself,
Yeah.
to do something a little bit different. So we do have a couple of questions that were sent in from some lupus warriors. I'll go with number one for now. Should lupus warriors go gluten free?
That's a good question. So everything I do with my clients is so individual because I'm
Mhm.
sure y'all know lupus affects everyone so differently. So some people will have joint pain, a butterfly rash, fatigue. Other people never had the butterfly rash and it's only affecting their kidneys. And it's just so different person to person. So that could be one thing. Gluten could be one thing, dairy could be one thing, but it really depends on the person. So if you feel bad after you eat gluten, then definitely try to eliminate for a little while and see just how your body reacts.
Yep, and put it in that journal. This way, you know. See,
Yeah.
it all ties in together. It all ties in together. That's a great answer.
And
Um,
on that journal too, put what you're grateful for. Like as you're filling out the foods and the symptoms, maybe on the top of the page, I'm grateful today's sunny. I'm grateful I get to go with my extended family, I don't know, to look at the Christmas lights, to go see a tree lighting, whatever it may be.
right. Don't make it always about the food. Don't make it always about what you're removing from your diet. Make it about, like you said, family, friends, fun, things of that nature. Absolutely. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, this is hard to see. Does cutting out beef? Okay, we talked about the dairy. We definitely said the dairy helps to bring down your flares. But what about beef? Does cutting out beef and dairy help?
Yeah, good question. So beef, honestly, that's one of those sources of the saturated fats. We really shouldn't be consuming too much of it. There is a good amount of research, especially if your lupus is affecting your kidneys, that you should get proteins from things that are more plant-based. So beans, black eyed peas, kidney beans, black beans, chickpeas, lentils, all of those are great sources of protein and no saturated fat. So that could be a nice replacement. Let's say you're eating beef 3 times a week and you want to replace it 1 time a week, maybe do the beans instead. So now you've made a healthier replacement and you haven't changed too much. But yeah, beef can be problematic. If
One
you're
step, and what I hear you saying is that one step at a time. Don't you don't have
totally,
yeah,
if we got to eat the whole elephant, we got
right.
to do it 1 step at a time.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So Destiny says, my skin, eyes, and mouth have been so dry. My eyes have been burning and itching a lot. I bought eye drops. Destiny, that is the most worrisome thing with lupus sometimes is that dry mouth and those dry eyes. I want to just say, I want to suggest that you talk to your doctor about it just to make sure that it's nothing more than just dry eyes and dry mouth. So you don't want to come up with, having Sjogren's syndrome and things of that nature. That might need something more than just a dietary change or a, mind change. So just make sure you check with your doctor about that and, let them know what's going on with you. Do you have any advice for that as well, Tanya?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind. Talk to your doctor, make sure that maybe it's because the heat got turned on and you just haven't been drinking enough water, versus Sjogren's, which is more serious and should be tracked too, because when it affects our eyes, when they're very, very dry, we worry about other things too.
And then you got to remember also, Destiny, that certain medications might be doing that to you as well. So, depending on what medications you're on, make sure you're just checking with your doctor so that you know that it's just the medication or like we were talking about, lack of water or something like that. Tanya said earlier, I love all of this relevant information. I'm so happy that you like it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited that we can provide this type of information for you. It's so important that sometimes we forget that we need to have that conversation of, being merry and mindful all throughout the holiday season. Um, Also, yeah, Destiny was saying about her skin changing with the weather. A lot of things change with the weather. I don't know where you live. I don't know, what type of, weather you're having. But if I tell people all the time, if the weather can change the waters and they can make high tides and low tides and typhoons and things of that nature, they can surely change our bodies. So, just make sure that you're talking to your doctor and making them understand that this is going on with you as far as your body is changing with the weather. We have another question here. Hold on. Will you be leaving the stream up on YouTube? Yep. This will be streamed. It will stay on YouTube for as long as YouTube will keep us. So we are coming up on our time. I have a couple of more questions for you. Is sea moss and elderberry recommended? That's a
Mhm.
question I get very often.
Very often. Me too. Okay. So here's my little dilemma with CMOS is that sometimes we can't be sure that it is coming from a non-polluted area. Unfortunately, our waters are very polluted.
Mhm.
And a lot of the earth, it's our fault as humans, but that's my big concern with that. And now the elderberry, so I always try to differentiate for people these two things. So there's immune
Okay.
modulating, which is basically like, okay, immune system, let's figure it out. What are we supposed to be doing? Oh, we're not supposed to be attacking ourselves. Good. And then there's immune stimulating, which
Mhm.
can be kind of across the board and just turn up the volume knob on your immune system where it just does more. And so that elderberry, I worry for people, and there is a little bit of like a oh, be careful with this, that it could just upregulate your whole immune system, which means also your autoimmune symptoms.
Yeah. And any type of supplements, I think you really need to be talking with your doctor
Yes.
and making sure that even those supplements that might be good for someone who is not on medications, those supplements can interact with your own medications and cause other issues that need. It's just it can be so crazy that we send ourselves into a tizzy, and it could have been avoided if we just asked our doctor.
Yes, definitely. And that was in your disclaimer at the beginning. Like, obviously, everything that we discuss is related to lupus, but you always want to have a conversation with your doctor specifically for you because we don't know your medical history, and everyone with lupus has a different story to tell and different medical history.
Yeah. And if anything that you get from what we're discussing here is just to make sure that you make a note that I need to talk to my doctor about A, B, C, and D. Right. So, don't take our advice as gold, but definitely make sure that you take this advice and write down your questions that you can take to your doctor. Look, I was on a podcast the other day and they were talking about this. What do you think, doc? It's as simple as a conversation.
Yeah.
Someone on Instagram, and we probably could talk for hours, Tanya. We always do this. Thank you. I have been considering to change my diet, especially since she's on dialysis. The thing I
Mhm.
dislike not getting enough protein. I dislike the weight loss. Yes, that can be very difficult. Dialysis is hard to deal with,
So hard.
especially, yeah, especially with your diet and just dealing with dialysis on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You should be able to access a dietitian that's familiar with dialysis. So that's something that's
Mhm.
pretty well across the board covered. So sometimes there's even a dietitian in the center. So I really hope that you can find that support locally for you.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point because sometimes we might not realize what is available to us because we have lupus or because we're on dialysis or because we're dealing with certain issues. Let's see what we have here. A couple of more questions and then we're going to wrap it up. Does anyone notice the flares increase with season changes? Sometimes. Sometimes I do. I notice that there are some flares that come up. I also have RA, so it could be anything for me, but sometimes with the season change, I think that winter is better for me as opposed to summer because I like to be in the sun. So you just have to we go back to the whole journaling. What's going on that day that you feel that you're getting this flare? And it might not have been anything. It just might be a flare that came out of nowhere. But sometimes it's what we're doing. So was it your food that you ate? Was it that you didn't have enough water? Was it that you were stressed? Because we know stress is a heck of a thing to deal with lupus. So
Definitely.
okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I can't put anybody on with me on Instagram. I'm sorry. Next time. Next time. And this is our last question from the audience for today. What do you suggest for someone with a serious sweet tooth?
Good question.
I've
Yeah.
got that too. I've got that issue too. Thanks for asking that, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So a lot of things. And it's so funny. I talked to a client this week about it, and she was like, I implemented all these dietary changes and I really just don't crave the sweets anymore. So there is something to be said about as you make changes, you may just crave it less. Because think about when we crave sweets, when we're low on energy, our body says, hey, give me a sweet, give me sugar. And then it will boost me back up. I'll get more energy. So that could be lupus related, or that could be it's been a long time since you last ate. Maybe it's just a habit of like, okay, we've had dinner. Now I want my sweet.
Yeah.
And habits can be made and they can be replaced. Also, maybe just have some fruit, maybe have some sweets in a different way. So I really like making tea. I find that like a nice cinnamon apple tea, especially this time of year, has a little bit of sweetness to it. It's not a crazy amount of sweetness because it's just the dried pieces of apple in the tea. But it's nice. It's warm. You drink it slow because it's tea. It's easy to be mindful while you're drinking it because it's hot. And that's a nice treat for myself that's a little bit sweet, but it's not a piece of cake. So there's a lot of ways, and honor that too. Like if you really want something sweet, okay, what can we do that's a healthy thing? So maybe a piece of fruit. Maybe it's like honey roasted almonds. So you're still getting something besides sugar that's actually going to nourish your body.
Right, right. That's a great point. That's a great point to find stuff that can nourish your body, but also give you that little sweetness in there. And I'm gonna tell you, I struggle with that as well. And sometimes I just have to not keep those sweet things that I like in the home. And like you said, replace it with something else. And if like you said, if you're eating it, your body's gonna start craving that type of food. And anything you do for 21 days, what do they say? It becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Try changing it one thing every day and see if
You
that
know,
works.
I had a client a really long time ago, and this was a lovely woman that would get whatever the biggest size at Starbucks is, venti,
I,
day. I
I
don't know.
call it large, but I guess.
The big one, the big one like this.
Right,
And
right.
she was adding like 20 pumps of the syrup. So usually, I guess in those it's like maybe 5. She had gotten her sweet taste to such an amount that that's what felt sweet. So as she tapered it down, we worked slowly and gradually of, okay, let's just take it down a notch because your taste buds change over the course of a month. You're getting new taste buds. We got all the way down to, granted the mug was getting smaller, but to the small coffee, and
Yeah.
she would get like the fun stuff there too, but down to 1 pump. And she was like, it tastes so sweet to me now. So also give yourself the grace of over time, okay, I'm going to make small changes.
Mhm.
Again, don't define yourself as like, oh, I'm a sweets person,
Right.
because you can be a sweets person in a lot of ways. Maybe it's fruits. Maybe you bake yourself cookies whenever you're really in the mood, but that's the best homemade cookie instead of just keeping like mediocre cookies in the cabinet that feel tempting all the time because they're just there.
Right. 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 And it all goes back to just taking it one step at a time and understanding your body and
Yeah.
being mindful of how your body feels when you're eating.
And nourishing yourself too. So if you're eating consistently throughout the day, you're having meals that are nutritious and satisfying, you're going to crave those sweets a lot less. Usually people that skip meals aren't eating enough, we really crave the sweets because you're just hungry.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're hungry, you're just gonna pick up anything.
Anything for quick energy, just give me.
Yeah, yeah. Someone said they need a sweet with the tea.
Okay.
Honey also. Honey's a good sweetener,
Yeah.
you know.
Put a
And,
little honey in there.
and I think you touched on it a little bit about what we say
Mm.
and how we condition ourselves with what we're saying to ourselves. Like we're saying, "Oh, it's so hard to diet. Oh, it's so hard to change this. Oh, I have a sweet tooth. I'm never going to get rid of it." And when we start to change the conversation with ourselves, we start to change our relationship with food. What do you think about that?
100%. I just can't nod hard enough with all the things that you're saying. Yes. I mean, our thoughts really and what we say become our reality. And
Absolutely.
even if you're just saying it out of habit, you take that on. I tell my daughter that she's little. She probably doesn't even understand half of what I'm saying because she's a little girl. But if she's hard on herself, I always tell her those words are going to be how you think of yourself. You have to build yourself up because you're going to run into people that aren't very nice and they're going to try to tear you down. So you have to make sure that you treat yourself with love and kindness. Okay, I didn't do it this time. That's okay. I'm going to try again. And that applies to all of us. Treat yourself with love and kindness. Use words like, it's been really hard for me lately with whatever it may be. Not I'm a failure, because that's just not true.
But I like what Carolyn just said. Absolutely, she can't have it around her, and she's just striving to get better. And that is such a poignant statement for me. I love that. Just striving to get better. And that's all we can do from day to day is just try to get better at what we're doing to make ourselves feel better
No
beyond.
one's perfect. Yeah. No one out there. You can see the most perfect person on social media where they look like they have it all together. They are they're in charge of everything in their whole life. They got it down.
Right.
No, they do not.
Right.
No one has it all together. No one is perfect. We're all just striving to be better. And that is beautiful.
Absolutely. And that's the most important part. The most important part is just to strive to be better. This is our last question, y'all. Don't y'all ask no more questions up in this forum. We've been on here for an hour and 12 minutes. This is our last question. What is your opinion on using stevia instead of sugar?
That could be a whole nother hour. So I'll say to also Tanya that I'm not a big fan of artificial sweeteners for a couple reasons. They're very sweet, like stevia, Splenda. They give the taste that's meant to be 1,000, 2,000 times the sweetness of sugar. So now we're getting used to a really, really sweet flavor. The other things I worry about with those artificial sweeteners, kind of all of them, is that they affect our gut microbiome, and then they also affect our hormonal balance a little bit. So when you taste something sweet, your body says, hey, body, we got sugar coming in. And then you start to release insulin. But if there's nothing sweet coming in, now you've started this whole trajectory that doesn't make sense. So I'm not a big fan of artificial sweeteners. I really try to get people to get as unprocessed as possible because your body knows what to do with honey, with brown sugar. It understands that. But with the artificial sweeteners, it can kind of be a little confusing and set you off kilter.
Right. And that's a whole, we're gonna have to do that next. We're gonna talk about, how the hormones and how all that plays in touch with how we eat and things of that nature. Wow, I love this. I've had an absolutely fantastic time talking to you.
It's always such a pleasure.
It definitely is. Give me your final thoughts for having a healthy and joyful holiday season.
This is my biggest one, and you talked about it, and I just want to bring us back there of saying no to the pushers, being okay with saying no to events, is take up space. You are important. Your health is a priority, and you may have already had seasons where your health was really in a tough place. So feel free to be that high maintenance person and say, I really don't want to go to that restaurant. It's only fried foods. That's not for me. If we want to go out as a group, here's 12 other restaurants that serve healthier things that I'm excited about. And that is okay. You are not being crazy, high maintenance, a pain in the butt. Like, you are taking up the space that you should in this world. And throughout the whole holiday season, if something is not serving you, and I feel like this gets easier and easier the older and older I get, of just, no, I don't have time for that. That's not for me. So if it's something that's a new thing for you, because you've been able to push yourself to say yes to everything, it feels so hard. But don't feel bad, because you are important. Your health is important. You get to take up space. And also, people's feelings really aren't going to be that hurt about it. It feels so hard to do, but they'll live. They will live, and you will feel better because you're not having the thing that makes you feel bad.
Right. Absolutely. I appreciate you. I so appreciate it. Let us know, how can people get in touch with you? I'm going to put it in the chat here.
Please. So y'all can find me on The Lupus Dietitian at Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Pinterest, all the places, on TikTok. And right now, I actually do have a Black Friday bundle that,
Ooh.
yeah, it's on sale too. So if you use the word thanks as the coupon code, it's only $37. You get a kitchen reset program, you get meal plan, you get recipes. I created this whole ebook. It's going to be like, you can purchase it now and you can start the kitchen reset program. And then you get the ebook on Black Friday. So it's just a really fun bundle that I put together. And there's a live like question and answer session on Zoom. So you get the information, you get to clean out your kitchen and reset it and just feel like you're organized and calm for the holidays. You get the lupus plan, and then you can ask me any questions. And it's only $37. So you can find it on my Instagram too.
Okay, on your Instagram. And what's your website? Is it thelupusdietitian.com?
It is. It is. It's all the same. So you can find it there too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about being merry and mindful during the holiday season. I so appreciate you taking out your time and your busy schedule. We have gone almost an hour and a half. Can you believe it, Tanya?
We can talk forever. I knew it, but you know what? You are so fun to talk to, and it's so important.
It really is very important and great information that you always give us. So thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. And we are going to say good night. All right.
Thank you. And I'm going to keep doing your mindfulness challenge.
There you go. And guys, remember the mindful eating challenge. We're on what, day 4, I think it is. You just use your different hand to eat and see how you have to really pay attention. Thank you, Tanya. I so appreciate you. Have a great night, darling.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I so appreciate it. We hope that you gleaned some information from this, and I hope that you are able to send this over to a friend and rewatch it later on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I so appreciate you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.